So thank you first to all be there, and mainly also because it's just a green way to exchange between countries. So I think it's both an opportunity to share with you ideas on the need for governance in the domain of green IT and make this collaboration, this sharing quite green and environmentally friendly. So uh, the program for today is first uh, to try to understand what Green IT and Green ICT is about. And I will try to go a bit further and speak to you also about what is called sustainability. I think that today, when you speak about environment, people, and finance, it's often about sustainability, which is a bit broader than just green IT. Then when we have understood what green IT is about and what sustainability is about, I will try to explain to you why we need governance. So first explain what governance is and how governance can be related to green IT and how it comes to help, if I may say, the work when speaking about green IT. Based on this understanding of green IT and governance in green IT, I will describe quite quickly, if I may say, a practical framework. So, a concrete way you can assess a company, assess a business in terms of green IT. I would say that those first 3 points would be the main theory for today, and I will apply that theory first to cloud computing. I think it's a high concept today, so I thought it was interesting to apply those concepts of sustainability and think together whether cloud is sustainable or not. And the second case study, sorry for the typo, is about transportation and how we can, when working on transportation with the tool of IT, how we can improve transportation's impact onto the environment. So that's it for the table of content for today. So let's first speak about Green IT and understand first what it is about in terms of environment, and then understand, of course, what Green IT is. Well, I think that you have heard a lot about the Earth is burning, that we are burning the resources on Earth, and this means a few things. First of all, there is the global warming. We can discuss for a long time about whether humankind do impact the global warming or not. I won't discuss about that. I will take it as an assumption. Also, we can discuss about green IT without thinking about just whether humankind impacts the global warming. Why do I say that? It's because when you speak about environment, you don't have to look only at what if I may say, you expel, so the greenhouse gas that you create, but you also have to think about the resources that you use. And we'll come on that later, but just to give you in a few words and create a first understanding of what I mean when speaking about scarcity of resources. When you take your laptop in your hands, before even turning it on, you had to take some resources from Earth, you have to melt down some material, you have to assemble them, you have to transport your laptop into the shop and go to the shop to buy it and so on. So all those activities already have an impact on the Earth. So no matter whether humankind do impact global warming or not, I think that the scarcity of resource is enough to take care about green IT. And the last point is global financial crisis. Why do I speak about that? It's because in these times of crisis, you cannot expect to invest anything just for the sake of being greener. No company today would do that. But luckily enough for us, most of the actions that you can take to make a greener business are also aligned with financially interesting actions. So all those three topics, the warming of the earth, the scarcity of resources, and the financial crisis, all make, I think, the context for green IT. To start up about better understanding the impact and measuring the impact that an activity can have on environment, we have to find a way to measure this impact. And one way, which is often spoken about, is the greenhouse gases. Now, you have to understand and be aware, but I think that you are probably already aware, that although most of the time the gas that we speak about is carbon dioxide, other gases do create greenhouse effects, like just water. Most people think water is just natural. Yes, it is. But water vapor creates greenhouse effects, methane as well, and some other gases. So you need frameworks, and there are some frameworks, quite advanced frameworks, that compare the effect of, let us say, 1 cubical meter of water vapor with 1 cubical meter of carbon dioxide, and so on. So you need those measures. That it is not the point today, within 2 hours, to go into details about those way of measuring and comparing the effect of those different gases. But just bear in mind that there are ways to compare the effect of different gases. Now, if you have those tools in hand to compare the effect of those different gases, you would say, okay, now I have those tools, I can compare my emissions of CO2 with my emissions of water vapor. That's great. But what happens if in the chain of value of producing goods in your company, you say that you outsource part of your production? So say that you buy spare parts for a car industry, for example. Well, if you want to really measure the impact of your company onto the environment, you have, of course, to take into account the way your providers do impact the environment as well. So that's not an easy equation, of course. You have to make the list of all your providers and somehow be able to assess the way your providers impact the environment and take that into account in the global impact your own company has onto the environment. So you see that those models can be quite complex. Still, there are ways, there are different frameworks that help you doing that, but just keep in mind that it's not an easy thing. Now, of course, a company, let us say, well-known example like Google. Google operates huge data centers, so they consume electricity, and of course, before to bring electricity on wires, some company have burned some coal or some nuclear plant to produce this electricity. So you could say Google has a high impact on the environment. Now, you also probably know that Google has invested a lot of money in solar panel industries, and they try to feed their data centers with solar energy. Of course, if Google does that, it's not just for the sake of environment, although it participates in creating a certain image, a marketing image. Google does that because it reduces the electricity bill for their data centers. But imagine that by putting solar panels on their roofs, Google produces more electricity than they need. It also means that the impact on the environment becomes kind of positive. So they offset their impact on the environment by creating green electricity. So to summarize the quite complex concept of an industry footprint on the environment, you have to consider your own direct footprint. You have to consider the footprint of all your providers and deduce from that what you offset, the carbon offsetting that you can do. And well, you already see that the models can be quite complex, and there is another point which is quite complex with this kind of calculation is make sure that if you ask your providers what their footprint is, that they compute their own footprint in the very same way you compute your own footprint. So you need standard frameworks to be able to compare and add all those footprints together to have a concrete image of your own footprint on the environment. I don't say it is impossible, I just say that it is quite complex, and there is a lot of work today to create those kind of standards, which also means that today there is no globally available standard to compute your footprint on the environment. Okay. Oops, sorry. There's a slight issue here with the slide. Okay. Okay. I will just explain. Sorry. There is a graphic that does not appear at least on my screen, but what I want to share here as a message is what is called the complete life cycle assessment. I introduced that when I introduced the concept of greenhouse gases. I tell you that before you use your laptop or your computer, produce those servers. So pick up some copper, some aluminium, whatsoever in the mines, then melt those metals, create those laptops and servers, transport them to local shop, and then of course at your own facilities, and then only you can operate your data center and take care of diminishing as much as possible the electricity consumption, and hence of course your impact on the environment. Why is it important? To give you one single figure, there was a study by Greenpeace, I think, that says that the total amount of energy that is needed to create an iPad is equivalent to 120 years of electricity consumption of the iPad when you own it. Which can, of course, interpret it in two ways. Either that the production of an iPad has a high impact on the environment, or it can also be analyzed in the sense that the electricity consumption is very low. But whatever the way you interpret those figures, what it means is that if you compare an iPad with, let us say, a Galaxy tablet from Samsung, and you see that the impact on the environment of Samsung is less than of an iPad just by building this tablet, it might make sense to buy Samsung rather than Apple, although maybe the Samsung consumes more electricity. And that's something that not a lot of people understand. The other point I want to mention about that is more, I would say, a philosophical thought, that if we remain in an economy which is driven by goods, whether for Apple or for Samsung, their business models consist in selling as many goods as possible. So in all cases, this kind of economy is eco-risky in the sense that what they want to do is you buy as many iPads as possible, and each time you buy a new iPad, of course, you have a negative impact on the environment. Now, what can we do about that? Well, there are some ways to change the approach. If you move from a goods-based economy towards a service-based economy and business model, it should change the equation. Let's take a very concrete examples of, I think, 3 years ago. Xerox, they sell photocopiers, you probably know them. They used to have, of course, a goods-based business model. They wanted to sell as many copiers as possible. Then they changed the business model. They said, we want to invoice our customers on a page basis, which means that it is up to Xerox to manage their copiers the best way possible, to make the lifetime of their copiers as long as possible, to decrease the cost of managing those copiers based on a certain number of pages which are copied. So moving from a goods business model towards a service business model has helped the company to be greener because they align their own interest with the interest of the environment. And there are a lot of thinking right now, among others in France, in the universities in France, to really change those business models and transform a goods business model into a service-based business model. Well, just a few figures. I will send you the PDF version of the slide, so it's just supporting my speech. You can read those figures later. So, what about Green-ict? I think that with this introduction on the environment and the impact that an industry can have on the environment, you have understood that the IT can have indeed an impact on the environment. So on one side, there are a few forecasts that say that, well, on one side, sorry, rewind a bit. So on one side, there is a few studies that say that the IT impact the environment for 2 to 3% of the global industry. It may seem not a lot, but if I give you as a comparison that operating the aviation industry creates also around 3% of the global production of greenhouse gases. While anytime when we speak about reducing greenhouse gases, all the people directly think about diminishing the number of times a tourist can take an airplane. If you agree with that, then you have to agree also with the fact that we have to work on the IT to diminish the impact on the environment. Again, the impact of IT on environment is the very same as the impact of operating the aviation industry. So if you take that on one side, and you also see that the computer power that will be needed in the next decade will always increase, you see that we have to do something about making the IT greener. Another point about that is that the European Union, has published a few reports saying that investing more and more on IT will be a need for the next decade. Otherwise, we will lose our own independence in terms of computing power, which has become now a strategic question. Sorry again, there is issue with the sizing of the graphics when transforming my PowerPoint. Anyway, this is a graphic that shows that if you take the energy that is produced when producing the electricity, and you go step by step burning the energy. I don't know whether there are some students from engineering faculty, but you know that the rate of conversion of energy towards electricity is around 30 to 40%, something like that. Then you have to transport your electricity to the data center. Then when you enter a data center, part of the electricity is used for climatization. The other part of electricity is actually used for your IT equipment, and so on and so on and so on. At the end, if you consider the CPU cycle that are actually needed to support a business, and you compare it to the energy that has been burned at the very beginning of the chain, you come up with the conclusion that only 0.5%, so less than 1%, is actually used by the CPU, which means that we waste as much as 99.5% of energy between the production of electricity and the actually consumption of CPU cycle. Which means, of course, that all along this chain of energy loss, we have room for improvement. And of course, I just reminded at the left-right corner, there is also again and again and again the life cycle of those materials. So again, there is room for improvement, which can do something to diminish the impact of the IT industry onto the environment. So, conclusion of this introduction to green IT, we can reduce the CO2 footprint of the IT industry, and we have to. What we can do is, of course, changing the global supply chain of the IT. Now, you also have to understand, I mentioned the concept of offsetting the carbon footprint, so doing something positive to the environment thanks to your own company. And you also have to understand that this concept is used to speak about two facets of green IT. Why two facets? Because if you take the 3% of the IT that is impacting the global mankind's footprint onto the environment, there are also 97% of other industries impacting the environment. And if you think that IT is today pervasive, I think there is no industry today that can live without the IT. It also means that among those 97% of other industries impacting the environment, there is also room there for IT to help in diminishing the industrial footprint onto the environment. Oops, sorry. One figure on that, and I will come on this figure later when speaking about those case studies, is that there's a study from GSI Group, GESI, I will give the reference later, that says that if we could make the best use of IT as a supporting tool in all industries in the world, we could diminish by as much as 16% the footprint of the global industry onto the environment. So bear it in mind, 1/6 of the global footprint of the industry on environment could be decreased by the thanks to the IT. Let's try to see a few real examples. Just easier, oops, like that. Yeah. So which kind of actions you can take in your company to diminish the impact of IT onto the environment? Well, of course, manage the electrical power. Probably you don't know, at least when I was ending my studies in engineering, I was not aware of this kind of stuff. If you take 100% of the electricity that comes into a data center, and if you haven't done anything special on your data center, you have to be aware that only half of the electricity goes onto your servers, disk, and network routers. The other half is, if I may say, wasted into the climatization and so on. So, and on the other side, well, if you go in Sweden, for example, that's a very good place for that, and you put your servers outside of a room, the temperature is most of the time quite low, so you don't need any climatization, any HVAC at all. So if you think carefully about how to manage the temperature of your data center, you can gain a lot of electricity. Another thing, of course, you can do is think about the printers, think about double-sided printing. All printers today can double-side print. So if you configure all your printers by default to be double-side printing, of course, you consume less paper. And so on, and so on, and so on. There are a lot of papers on the net, a lot of white papers that explain a few best practices that you can use to diminish the impact of IT onto the environment. One place you can go if you want to see those kind of best practices is search Google on European Code of Conduct. It's research program managed by the European Union that gives a framework of best practices that can help you in better managing your IT. Now, if we look at what is called green by IT, so where the IT can help in diminishing the impact of your industry onto the environment, let's take a few examples and we'll come on those later in the case studies. Well, if you optimize the delivery traject in a logistics company, obviously you will consume less fuel, so that's less money that you have to waste on the fuel. That's a good point on a financial point of view. But of course, you also produce less greenhouse gases. If in a city, for example, instead of putting water onto the flowers and so on, you optimize the way you drop waters on those flowers, you can divide by 2 to 3, even 4 the quantity of water. And we see here that we don't speak about CO2 emission, but really resource consumption. At last, another, well, it's not of course an exhaustive list, but another quite easy example is if you manage all the lighting, all the warming of your building thanks to computers, you can optimize those aspects in the facilities and of course consume less energy. So all those are a few examples, and I will come later on a group that is a consortium of industries which is called GESI, so GESI, and they have made a big study that they renew each and every 2 to 3 years, identifying in the various industries where the IT can help diminishing the impact of the companies onto the environment. So, as I told you in the introduction, I wanted to speak about Green-ict as I've been asked to, but also extend the concept towards something which is quite hyped today and which is about sustainability. Why is it important? Because, well, we've just to be, as I've understood that I'm speaking about, speaking to management students. On a financial point of view, we know that in the last 3 or 4 years, we are in a crisis. And a lot of people say that we are in a crisis mainly because people have been searching for quick wins, for short-term earnings. So the question is to avoid this type of bubble crisis. How can we make our businesses more sustainable? So that's the profit, the blue side of sustainability. And if you want to make your business more stable, more sustainable, of course, you need people. So don't expect to run your business if you don't care about the people. And at last, if tomorrow you don't have resources anymore, you will run out of business as well, so you have to care about your planet. Taking all those 3 dimensions, people, planet and profit, we think about the triple bottom line. Taking all those dimensions into consideration all together, so not one after the other, but all together, will create, well, that's what people expect today, sustainable business. So that's the reason why I wanted to give a few words on sustainability. Speaking about, well, there are 2 terms that are often misunderstood, which is corporate social responsibility, CSR, and sustainable development. The corporate social responsibility mainly focuses on society and people. And that's something that occurs in the company, I would say, that has been occurring for 10 to 20 years. And since the years 2000, or even I think 1990, you often have a side of the CEO, the CFO, the CIO, also the CSR, so the corporate social responsible people. So that's something, again, focused on people. Just the same way as Green-ict focuses on planet. Now, when you want to speak about sustainable development, again, you have to take the three dimensions, people, planet, and profit, all together and consider them on the same level. That's the reason why, if you read articles on the subject, we often speak about the three P's or the triple bottom line. Or is it just philosophy, or is it just a subject for blogs and white papers? No, I don't think so. Today, there is a lot of investment. Okay, maybe it's marketing, I agree, but still, there is a lot of investment on what is called smart cities. In my opinion, I would say in Green-ict's opinion, so myself, uh, smart city is somehow the instantiation of the sustainability at the level of the city. If you go to the IBM website, for example, Siemens do a lot also about smart cities. And look at their definition about smart city. They speak about smart economy, smart mobility, smart environment, smart people, smart living, smart governance. And if you map that onto the three dimensions of sustainability, you quite easily see with the colors I've used that the general definition of a smart city easily map onto the dimension of sustainability. So in my opinion, it's not an official definition, so take it for what it's, well, just for the fact that it comes from me, that a smart city is just a sustainable city if you take those definitions of sustainability. Now, what it means to be smart, it's about information. Because to be smart, you need to learn a lot. So when you speak about information, obviously you speak about IT. It's about understanding. So obviously, if you want people to understand the ecosystem where they live, you need to care about those people. And again, if you want to understand huge sets of data, you need the computing power to create value from huge sets of data. And at last, you need people to interact, and that's something that you will read about if you browse, if you crawl the internet, that you transform each and every people somehow as a sensor in the city. And then, of course, you gather all those data, you extract value, and you take decisions based on those data. Let me just give one more word on this slide. With this quick introduction to the concept of a smart city, you also see one thing which is quite important, I think, is that to make a city smart, you need to tackle the mobility, you need to tackle the economy, you need to tackle the people and the education, and so on and so on. So you need to gather a lot of people all together in a single direction. And that's quite hard, because if you have to manage a project, to create a product, for example, that's quite easy. You have 20 people in front of you and you manage them, quite easy. You manage them in a single direction with a single goal for everyone. Now, if you have to manage very diverse groups, again, when you speak about mobility, about communications, about education, and so on, and you have to gather all those groups of people together in a single goal and make sure that they all act with this single idea in mind. Well, you need what is called governance, and that's of course one of the topics of today. You need governance to orchestrate all those people into with some harmony, if I may say, if I speak about orchestration. Well, expected capabilities. Well, Marty, I think that you have understood that if you can make a city smart, you can also ensure that the city will grow, I would say, forever, that it will use its resources efficiently, it will limit the outcomes, so the waste in general, and there's also something quite important as far as cities are not smart today, you have to make them smarter. And that you cannot, I think, make cities smart without the help of technology. And take also the assumption that technology changed quite a lot those days. You have to make, if you want to make your cities smart, you also have to make your cities ready for change, I would say, forever. Meaning that if something will be stable in your city tomorrow, that's the change. The change will be stable, if I may say, in the sense that you will enter into an ever-changing population, and that's quite important as well.
Wow. Now that we have
Can you hear me now?
now, he will be back.
Hello.
But I forgot to tell you.
Yeah, okay, we are back. I don't know what happened, but anyway, so we are back. Sorry for this technical issue.
Tell me and we can.
So, as I told you, there are a few companies now making a lot of studies, marketing studies, image studies, I agree, but still they are spending this money in first identifying which cities make efforts in being greener and smarter. And of course, they help those cities making some smart moves.
Hello.
As Central European people, I could expect, and indeed it's the conclusion of Siemens study, that cities in Sweden or Norway and Finland, in the Nordics in general, are making indeed a lot of effort in being greener and greener. And you see that the top 3 cities are all from the Nordics.
Yes? Can you? Yes? Okay.
So, yeah, kind of conclusion on smart cities. In general, I would say that what we tend to do, thanks to the sustainability thinking and IT, is making a smart society in general. And I think that innovation and green by IT are tools that are very, very important to make a society smarter and smarter. And I think that's one of the points of the workshop today. So let's now tackle a quick introduction in governance, and of course in green IT governance. So let's try to understand the concept of governance first, and we will speak quite quickly because it's a huge topic about regulations and standards. why is it important to speak about regulations and standards? Because that's the only way to compare two companies, whether on a financial point of view or whether on an environmental point of view. Take the example of accountancy. You have international standards of accountancy to make sure that when a company publish the accounts, they publish it the very same way from one company to the other, and you can compare them. That's the reason why regulations and standards are very important. So, why do we need governance? Well, governance, in a few words, it's a way to formalize the dynamics of your company. For example, when you have to sign off for a budget, whether one people can sign off any budget or whether you have different position in the company that have to both sign a budget, that's very important to avoid issues and fraud in a company. So if you set up sane governance into a company, you also promote trust into the organization. You improve the quality of the decisions, because if you formalize the way formalize the dynamics of the company, the way decisions are taken, it also means that the decisions are also always taken the very same way, and hence you improve the quality of the decisions. If you implement a sane governance in your company, you also improve the perception of the people, because they better understand what role they play into the company and why they play this role. So somehow I could say that a sane governance also makes your company sustainable. You mitigate the risks because you perfectly know how your company moves, so you don't take the risk of being in an unknown territory when you take decisions. Let me take a very well-known example about governance. I would say governance for dummies would say that you cannot advise a company and audit it at the same time. You probably have heard about the Arthur Andersen scandal 10 years ago, or was it 15 years ago? Arthur Andersen was a big fight at this time. Now we speak about big four only, because Arthur Andersen has died. They were both auditors and advisors in some companies, and they made errors, of course, hiding some issues when auditing companies. After that, Arthur Andersen became Accenture. So you see that there was a lack of governance in the way Arthur Andersen was managed, and this led to first the bankruptcy of Arthur Andersen and the bankruptcy of a lot of companies in 99, 2000, something like that. So governance, you have to see that as a risk management issue in your companies. This is it, I would say, about the goals of governance, so why and the type of goals you want to reach with governance. Now, if you want to reach these types of goals, what kind of domains do you have to tackle when you speak about governance? You have to speak about strategy, make sure that you have a sane strategy and that everybody works in the same direction for the strategy. You have to make sure that you manage your risk correctly. Think about Société Générale 2 years ago when a broker, no, how do you call that? Well, a guy in the salle des marchés in French. So he invested 5 billion euros onto companies, and the stock exchange went down. So he lost a lot of money. I think 2 billion euros. One single person lost 2 billion euros for the account of the bank. So you see there that the risk has been wrongly managed. Again, an issue in governance. Compliance management, being compliant with standards. ID management, portfolio management, so carefully managing your portfolio of projects and managing your projects. All those topics, in fact, I would say that they define the dynamics of your company, they define the way your company moves, and they are all taken under the umbrella of governance. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, where I quickly introduced the concept of governance, one of the points of governance is making sure that all stakeholders are aligned in the way, in the direction that you want to take. One formal approach we have taken at Green-ict is starting from IT governance framework, which is COBIT, which is governance framework that explains how a company can best manage its IT. So based on this framework, what we have done is, if we want a company to manage its IT in an environmentally friendly way, we have to pursue a certain business goals. Based on those business goals, we can identify the IT goals that you have to pursue to support those business goals. And based on those IT goals, you can also identify the main IT processes that you have to take care about. This might be a bit fuzzy for you, but just bear in mind that we haven't reinvented the wheel. We have based the identification of the main IT processes that we have to tackle to be as green as possible based on an existing framework. That's quite important. And based on the list of processes of importance, we have identified the main stakeholders. Why is it important? Again, because thanks to the governance, we identify the people and bring all those people together and make sure that all those people will work in the very same direction, in the very same goal. In a few words, why would we talk to the risk or the legal people when speaking about Green-ict? Well, imagine that we want to implement teleworking infrastructures. We need IT to set up an IT infrastructure that can support home working. Well, there are legal issues. There are human resource issues and legal issues because you stay at home. So the insurance that you have to take are different and so on. If you want to work on the way climatization is managed in your data center, obviously you have to collaborate with facilities. If you want to buy Samsung tablet instead of iPad tablets for your IT, you need to work together with the procurement to make sure that in the way they buy new goods, they take care of the environmental impact of building those goods, and so on and so on. So you see that the Green-ict issue is not just an IT point. It's bringing a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders in a company all together behind you in a Green-ict initiative. To give you experience-based figure, when we make at Green-ict an assessment of a company in terms of Green-IT, we make interviews, and most of the time I would say that we interview 30 to maximum 40 people from the IT, and the rest, meaning 60 to 70% of the people that we interview are out of the IT department. So this gives you an idea that a Green IT project is not a project that should be managed by the Department of Information Technologies, but rather from a CSR perspective or from a financial perspective and so on. So, a few drivers to implement governance. Well, you probably have understood. Make sure that all people work in the same direction with the same objectives. So, something that we often speak about when speaking about governance is a matter of alignment, making ICT more efficient. You can expect sustainability. I've spoken about that a lot of times already. Most of the times, setting up a better governance also identifies waste of energy, so you improve your operation cost, you change the behavior of your people, you manage the risk, and so on. You can review that by yourself, I think, but I think that all those bullet points are quite self-evident. Now, you also have to understand, because as students maybe you are not aware of those kind of stuff, that the company doesn't work on its own. It's one thing as a future manager to understand the way the company works and make sure that the company works as efficiently as possible. But you also have to understand that the company works in a certain ecosystem. When I speak about ecosystem, it means that regulations might come and force you to be greener. For example, since July, I think, of this year, all listed companies at the London Stock Exchange, they have to publish a carbon reporting into their annual reporting. They don't have to reach any goal at this point, but they have to make the internal study of their carbon impact onto the environment. Taking into account, think about the very first slides I showed you, what is called the secondary impact. They have to assess their providers and in their reporting, take into account the impact their providers have onto the environment. Another point is, a lot of people speak today, a lot of citizens want today to be greener, to think about the environment. So it can be also a driver for a company to say, I want to please my customer and show that I have a greener image. Take the example, we can discuss about this example, but still it's a marketing move that they have made. 3 or 4 years ago, the main color of McDonald's went from red to green. They've made a marketing around, we try to make sane food. We can discuss about sane hamburgers, but anyway, that's pure management of the customer's expectation. Political pressure, that's quite obvious after the big meeting in Varsovia about the Kyoto Protocol. NGOs, Greenpeace has made a report 3 or 4 years ago pinpointing Apple to be not very good at environmental perspective, and Apple had to respond to that, go to the Apple website. Sorry, I'm an Apple freak. Go to the Apple website now, and they have a few pages on the impact on the environment and the way they manage the environment in their supply chain. So these are a few external drivers that you can use tomorrow to motivate a company to invest into a project for governance. And as I said, there are a lot of standards and regulations that exist. It's not the point today to dig deep into those standards, regulations, and labels, but be careful, and if you are interested, take some time to understand that. There are standards like ISO standards. Standards are standard way of working, but nobody obliges you to follow a standard. Okay? And a standard is more or less free. Any consulting company can use a standard and sell a service in helping another company to implement a standard. There are labels. Labels are managed by a certain company like Energy Star. Most of the laptops have a little sticker on them with Energy Star, which means that they manage the electricity of the computer in an efficient way. Take FSC, for example, which are labels on the way the paper is produced. These labels are not mandatory, but you have to pay to add the sticker on your goods, which means that most of the time it's mainly a marketing investment. Then you have best practices like the code of conduct of data center, the third line on the slide, which are well, just open best practices. Okay, I think that speaks by itself. You have also reporting standards and at last what is called directives, which are the direction that a public institution like European Union can take. If you are interested in those kind of elements, make sure that you are not confused with the notion of reporting, best practice, and so on, because the impact these can have, these texts, these papers can have on your company are very different. One thing I want to mention about that, again, I don't want to enter into too many details, but what we see is a move now about those environmentally related standards, which are today followed on a voluntary basis and are becoming they tend to have no financial impact. Take again well, the example of the companies listed into the London Stock Exchange. They are not really financially impacting right now. They are mainly on reporting, but probably that if they have to report now, they will have an impact later on. This is just to show that those regulations and standards are emerging, and a few countries have been studied on this point of view by the Green-ict to show which countries forces reporting or forces financial impact onto data centers. So that's also a very interesting website, energygrid.org, I think. It's a consortium of companies trying to make data centers as green as possible, pure technical point of view. So, yeah, I know that within 5 or 6 slides, it's a bit hard to understand what governance is. I hope that you already had some notions on this concept. So let's now see how you can implement governance. Well, first of all, as I said, governance is a way to formalize the dynamics of your company. So you also have to first understand how your company works today. Why is it so? Because you cannot set up a revolution in the way people behave in a company. You have to set up an evolution and not a revolution. So very important to assess where you are, where you want to be, and if the place where you want to be is far away from where you are now, you have to go step by step. So please bear in mind when you speak about governance, changing the governance of the company, be evolutionary, and not revolutionary. Never lose from your mind, that's something that we often forget about, that governance is about behavior of the people. So it's about people. Remind about this three bottom line: financial point of view, environmental point of view, and people side. And if you want to change the governance, you have to change the way people work. That's what we call people side of change. That's something that's often neglected. I don't know whether you have some concepts of change management in your courses, but that's something you should read about. Tomorrow, as future managers, you will have to manage people, and people are hard to change. But there are some tools on the web to help you change people. I've listed a few standards, regulations, reporting, whatever you call them, but bear in mind that they exist. So if you are in a company and say, well, my IT, or the relation between my IT and the core business is not that good, how should I work, how should I best manage my IT? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to be more clever than hundreds and hundreds of people making consortium and creating best practices. Most of the standards that I have listed in the previous slide, you have to understand that there are each time at least 100 people working on those standards. So don't try to be more clever than them. They've done the job, so just spend a few days, sometimes a bit more, to understand those governance standards, and then try to see how you can implement them in your own company. So all that as an introduction to a very practical framework, which is a framework that we have set up at Green-ict. As I said, governance is, you have to first assess where your company is, so what is the dynamics of your company, then plan a few steps to change your company, implement the changes in your company, and then sustain. And that's very important, because when you have implemented a change in your company, you have to make sure that the new way of working, the new dynamics of your company have brought to your company the added value that you expected. So you have to assess again your company, see whether the move you've made was worth, and then change again. Because a company that is on the move is also a company that will be able to more easily react to the change in the ecosystem. Our framework tackles 3 levels of management: the strategy, the tactics, and the operations. And that's very important, because today most of the Green-ict framework focus on operation. How you can best use your electricity, how you can best use the papers in the printers, and so on. So that's very operational questions. What we try to do is assess the strategy of the company, assess the IT strategy, make sure that IT strategy do support the company strategy, and then make sure that the tactics to the project that we set up in the IT are really aligned with the strategy of the IT, and then see whether the operation is aligned with the tactics. So those three levels of management are tackled, and five main domains are tackled. The X-Fusion, just forget about it. It's a bit more too much complex for the short time I have. But centralized IT, so in a few words, the data center. Decentralized IT, laptops, printers, mobile, smartphone, and so on. IT lifecycle, so go further than just electricity consumption, but make sure that the way you buy new devices is eco-friendly, and make sure that after you have finished using a laptop, either you assess your provider that they will reuse the laptops when you make a leasing, or make sure, for example, that you find a school near to your company and you hand over your laptops to the school, for example. And then, if you hand over your laptops to a school, well, you are back to the people side of sustainability. Remember, people, finance, and environment. And at last, green by IT, how in a certain company, the IT might help the core business to be a bit greener. So again, assess. I really want to insist on that because that's important to always consider when you speak about governance, improvement cycle. In management theory, we speak also about PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. So continuous improvement. These are very, very important concepts when speaking about governance. So, as I said, three levels of management: strategy, tactics, and operations. And yeah, maybe one management theory word. When you speak about strategy, you speak about the time frame of 3, 5, 10 years. Tactics is about 1 to 3 years, more or less. Operations is day-to-day way of working. So you see also that it's very important to align all those to make sure that what you do tomorrow will build your future for the next 3 to 5 years. I agree that it may seem a bit conceptual, a bit theoretical, but believe me, that's very important when you are in a company. I will skip those slides. I put them just for your information. Okay, this is just explaining the few domains that we tackle in the framework. I will just stop here because this is also an introduction to the case studies that I will make in the last part of this presentation. When I introduced Green-ict, I told you that there was two facets to Green-ict. The green of IT, that's the facet that most of the people think about. So how can I make my IT greener? But also the green by IT. So where my IT can help my company to be greener and greener. And so I will focus on that and more specifically on the example of transportation in the next few slides. Why is it important to think about that? For two reasons. First, on a pure figure point of view, the IT participates to an amount of 2 to 3% of the global footprint of industries and could participate to an amount of 16% to improving the global footprint of industries onto the environment. So green by IT is very important for IT as an actor. The other point is, thanks to green by IT thinking, you also make IT a more proactive actor in the companies. What do I mean by that? If you are, let us say, in the banking sector, well, the goal of a bank is to manage money. So as such, IT is not a goal for a bank. IT is a supporting function in a bank. Which also means that most of the IT people feel like we are just there to support the business. We are a cost center, not a benefit center, not a business unit, but a cost center. So it is not that much motivating. If, thanks to thinking about green IT, you gather people and think, how can my IT help my company be more eco-friendly? You also put the IT back in a driving seat for projects. So it is also more motivating for the IT people to think about green by IT. And there is a lot of space for improving the industry thanks to the IT. So here is the the URL towards the JZ group, which is a consortium. I already spoke about this group, and they've made this study. I will base my presentation on this study, taking into consideration 6 main domains of industry: power industry, transportation industry, manufacturing, service, consumer, agriculture, and buildings. 4 types of action that the IT can have, and try to evaluate the amount of CO2 or footprint that the IT can help in decreasing in those different industries. I will come on that later with very specific case studies. So also, of course, if you are interested, please go onto this site, so jz.org. There are a few reports, well, there are a big reports of 200 pages that really takes each and every initiative that can be started by IT and analyzed what can be done. They also explain how they have, because that's quite hard, evaluated the impact of a certain initiative of IT onto an industry, and then they have other specific paper on the green IT. So, if you are still awake, I hope so, 2 case studies that I wanted to share with you, which are cloud computing and transportation. Why cloud computing? Well, because, well, 2 reasons for cloud computing. First, I think it is a hype today to speak about cloud computing. And what I want to share with you is that some people, and they are right, I think, are not fully sure that using cloud computers or cloud solution is really eco-friendly. Why? Because the models, again, are quite complex. You have to bear in mind that first, does everybody know what cloud computing is? Cloud computing is, instead of having your own servers in your company, you use, let's take a very known example, instead of having Exchange mail servers inside your company, you use Gmail. So for using Gmail, you just need a browser on your laptop. You don't need a data center. And Google has its own data center, which you connect to, and you can manage your mail thanks to Google. Fair enough, you would say, okay, I don't produce any CO2 with my data center, so this is indeed green. Don't forget 2 things. First, Google produces CO2, so it's secondary footprint. And second point is, by connecting to Google data center, which is in Oregon, I think, in the US, but they have a few data centers, but the main one is in Oregon. You need network infrastructure, and network infrastructure is turned on all the day long. So, in fact, you produce CO2 because of the networking infrastructure. So don't think that because of using a cloud, you don't produce any CO2 anymore. You have to make a full model, a full balance model to make sure that cloud computing is interesting. And there are a few models. I'm not sure whether I left this slide in my presentation. Let me quickly check here. Otherwise, yeah, I will send you later the URL towards this website. There's a study, of course, financed by Google, so maybe it's not fully objective, but they say up to them, again it is biased, but that for some non-core IT functions like mail management and Word, Excel, PowerPoint, so office automations, and CRM, so customer relationship management, which are all very common IT applications in all companies. For those kind of non-specific IT functions, they say that you can gain as much as 85, I think, % of your footprint on the environment. Again, this is a study made by Berkeley University and funded by Google, so it's a bit subjective, but it gives an idea that it should be eco-friendly. But my point is maybe to go a bit further. Why? I wanted to ask the question more on the sustainability issue. Is cloud sustainable? And my answer is yes, I do believe that cloud is sustainable. And I will try to show you why, applying the various concepts that we have browsed together. So maybe if you are not too much aware with cloud computing, why would you, as a big company, let us say, Nokia or IKEA or whatever big company, they have a supporting IT, that's for sure. So is IT the core business of IKEA? I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure it is not. So do they want to set up IT team to manage their IT? Well, maybe it's a waste of money. They would rather use external company to manage their IT. Another point about the reason for using shared IT resources is that when you have an IT infrastructure, let us say ERP system, so SAP, for example, where you manage all your accountancy, at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter, you have to make your reporting. At the time you make your reporting, you have a very high peak of demand of IT power. So say that you usually need 10 machines to support your IT. At the time of reporting, you need 20 machines. So would you have in your data center 20 machines all the year, every day, just for a peak of usage of 3 days, which means that you waste half of your resources for the other 362 days of the year? No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because those machines consume electricity even if they are idle, and it doesn't make sense because you have to produce them. So that's another reason why you would use extra power in a shared data center like cloud computing. Another reason for using cloud computing, so computing power outside of your company is the notion of open data. More and more and open innovation go together. They're the same concept. That two competitors, let us take an extreme example, it won't happen, but anyway, Google and Microsoft want to share their data because analyzing both data from Google and from Microsoft would help the companies to innovate, to make better products. But the more data they have, the more precise their analysis can be, so they share data. That's the concept of open data, and behind that, open innovation. So sharing data between even competitors to create value, then of course your value is not in the data you own anymore, but in the analysis that you can make. If, again, you want to share data, it's easier to share data in a neutral infrastructure like Amazon cloud computing or Google cloud computing or whatever cloud provider, rather than in a specific company. Okay, I just leave out the last 2 points. Now, is cloud computing the solution? Well, I would say that it is part of the solution for those issues that I have mentioned, but again, we want to insist on that because I too often hear the speech that because you externalize part of your business, you just remove this part of the footprint. Outsourcing the IT production doesn't relieve you from being accountable from the footprint of here, for example, your cloud provider. That's the first remark. A second remark is that, generally speaking, the sustainability impact is not that easy to understand, but I will explain within a few 3 or 4 slides why you can be at ease that yes, cloud is sustainable. Also, you have to understand the people side of the cloud solution. Why do I say that? It's because also I'm sure that if you host your IT into a cloud infrastructure, the availability of your IT service will be higher than if you host your IT by yourself. The people inside your company will feel like there is a higher risk of a disruption in the IT service. That's wrong, but that's a perception that a lot of people may have. So going to the cloud, you also have to manage this risk perception. And at last, and that's a real problem that we have spoken about in the last 6 months with the PRISM issue and the US spying the mails and so on. It is true that any cloud provider based in the US, so not only the infrastructure being based in the US, but the headquarters being based in the US, so it's true for Google, for Microsoft as cloud providers. As far as the headquarters are in the US, the CIA, NSA, and so on could have access to your data. It's quite exceptional, but they have the right, according to the US legal, they have the right to access the data hosted by Microsoft or Google. And that's the reason why the European Union pushes a lot now in the funding projects that the Europe develops its own cloud providers to compete with the US cloud providers. And I was 3 months ago in Asia for a conference, and they have the same issue. So they really try in Asia, it was in Malaysia and Singapore, they really try to develop their own cloud providers to make sure that their company on the territory of Malaysia, well, of Asia in general, could host the IT in these Asian cloud and make sure then that the Asia remains independent of the US in terms of IT power. So that's a real question today. So this is it about the question that you have to ask, the topics that you have to tackle when thinking about cloud and sustainability. Now, what are the main attributes of cloud that you can use in your evaluation? First, that physical resources are shared. To take an extreme example, look at the CPU graphic of your laptop, and you will see that it is 90% of the time as high as 2%, which means that your laptop is there, the CPU has been built, the memories have been built, and so on and so on and so on. And they are either you have polluted the environment for nothing for 97% of the material. So now, if you could have a CPU that is just running a browser and all the real power that you need is hosted on a shared resource, you would you could keep all the CPUs busy for 70%, let us say, all the time, so have a more efficient use of your resources. Abstraction of resources is not that important for here. On-demand provisioning is very important. If you use a shared data center, you can expect that the reporting peak that I spoke about, so each quarter you have to close your accounts, so you have to make reporting. You can expect that not all companies will close their accounts at the same time. So 10 CPUs that Nokia would use at some point are not used at the same time as the 10 CPUs that IKEA need for the reporting and so on. So again, you would have a better use of the computing power. Not only would you have a better use of the computing power, but also after you have used this power, you can just get rid of your CPUs and be back on the just your needs and not more. So on a resource point of view, using cloud computing is very interesting. So for the planet, why is it useful? Well, I have to say that I prepared this analysis about cloud and sustainability for this conference in Asia, where it is quite hot and humid region. It's very hard to make a data center in Malaysia or in Asia in general, because which is data center which is energy efficient, because you have to cool your data center and you have to dry the air in the data center. Now, if you use the concept of data center, of cloud computing, and put your data center, of course, here it's a bit a joke, but why not, in northern region, in Greenland or in the northern Sweden or northern Finland or whatsoever, you don't need any cooling anymore. So on the energy point of view, putting your data center on an iceberg is quite interesting. Now, of course, you have other impacts, like you have to bring electricity there and you have the networking issue. That's true, but still, on a planet point of view, you can put your data center wherever you want. And I want to insist on that because in this study from Berkeley, study is called, I don't remember the name, but anyway, this study from Berkeley, they also mentioned that one of the bigger impacts when choosing a cloud provider to diminish your impact on our environment is which provider you choose and where is its data center. Because obviously, and I don't want to enter into political discussion, but if you have your data center in China, where most of the electricity is produced based on burning coal, obviously your electricity is not green. So even if you use a cloud provider in China, it's not greener for the planet because the electricity is polluting a lot. If, on the other side, you use a data center which is hosted in probably in the Nordics, where you have a lot of wind power, a lot of sea power, and so on for producing electricity, obviously, it's better on a planet point of view because the electricity itself that you use in the data center, no matter whether the use of electricity after that is efficient or not. So the production of that you've made of electricity is greener, so of course it's better for the planet. Again, the fact that you use cloud computing lets you choose where you place your data center. You don't have the issue of idle machines. I've spoken about that. And the other big point for the planet is that using those kind of providers also offer you huge computing power. And that's one of the points of green by IT solutions. It's where you can crunch huge sets of data to extract value from them. This can only be done with huge power capabilities that you cannot host in your own data center. So for all those reasons, on a planet point of view, I am convinced that using cloud computing is beneficial. Again, watch out about network energy. On the people side of the sustainability, I think that using cloud computing, let's just give me 1 minute to ask someone. Wait, I'm back. Merci. Oui. Sorry, there was some noise in my home, sorry. So on the other side, using cloud computing also facilitates the creation of communities. Communities meaning that you embrace people, I would say just people, into creating value. Think about, well, doesn't really create value, but anyway, Facebook or things alike. If you want to make open innovation, involve people into innovation, you need to create those communities to create value and foster new ideas. Now, be careful again about the people side of change. I've spoken about that. And the other point is, of course, if you now host your own data center and want to go to the cloud, it also means that you have to think about what you do with your IT people. On the profit, so meaning money side of the thing, is that the fact that you use cloud computing also lets a very small company have a smart ID and use huge computing power to really implement this idea. Again, there are a lot of innovation today made based on big set of data. 10 years ago, only IBM, HP, and those kind of players could have ideas and use mainframes and so on to crunch data. Today, by using cloud, you also let small companies create big ideas, meaning that you foster the development of the business, the development of finance. Again, don't forget about accountability. So I hope that within these few slides, I convinced you as well that cloud computing is indeed a sustainable solution. Let me now tackle the last topic of this workshop, which is how can IT help in transportation? So, I already gave the figure, but let me remind it as an introduction to this chapter. Ahead of the 2 to 3% that represent the footprint of the IT industry onto the environment, there is those 16% that have been evaluated to be the amount of greenhouse gases that IT can help decrease in general industry. So this GESI group, you've seen the URL in one of the previous slides, have split the global industry in 6 main domains, and have tried to evaluate for each domain, so power, transportation, agriculture, building, manufacturing, and consumer services, how much the IT can help save the planet. I can summarize the question like that. I think that the units that I used are not that important, but just see that we can expect that the main point is about energy consumption, or energy production, sorry, and then transportation. That's quite obvious. These two industries, power creation and transportation, are the two industries that create the highest impact onto the environment. Let's try to identify 4 categories of levers, so of domains each time where the IT can help, and quite obviously again, well, I mean, this is the point where the IT can help is by optimizing processes. Why? Because IT, thanks to IT, you can crunch huge sets of data, you can simulate various processes, you can change parameters, simulate a new process, and so on, without having to rebuild your prototypes each time. So, to give you a figure that I heard from the European Union as a competitive advantage for the car industry in Europe, I think that 15 years ago, so without the IT power, developing a new car, so going through prototypes and so on, took, I think the figures was 3 to 5 years. Today, thanks to the IT computing power, so computational fluid dynamics and so on, you can develop a new car within 2 to 3 years. So, which is more or less dividing by 2 the time to market. Why is it so? Because you don't have to build your prototypes and then change the parameters, rebuild a new prototype, and so on. So IT is there and can help to optimize a lot your processes. So let's have a look to transportation and how IT can help in the transportation industry. Yeah. First introduction maybe is when we speak about improving the impact of an industry or a service onto the environment, we don't want to decrease the service. So to take some extreme, I need to go each and every day into my office, and let's say that I have 1 hour to commute to my office to meet people. Of course, the function that I need when I go to my office is to meet people. So if I want to decrease my impact onto the environment, I need to make sure that I won't remove the function meeting people. That's the reason why I have to set up, like today, teleconferencing and so on, that will make sure that I will be able to meet people without going to my office. So bear in mind when you want to make a business greener, that you won't decrease the level of service that you offer. If we take the main initiatives that have been identified by JZ Group, optimizing the logistics network, telecommuting, and eco-driving, all those three, so 3 among the, I think, 10 initiatives that have been identified, or 11, sorry, those 3 among those 11 represent 50% of the potential improvement that we can make in the transportation industry. Now, if you read the JZ report, they will explain within 20 to 30 pages the model that they have used, and you will see in the next 2 slides it is not as easy as it may seem to evaluate whether setting up telecommuting or eco-driving is eco-friendly or not. Let's take eco-driving. First remark is, if indeed you end up with the conclusion that eco-driving is eco-friendly, don't forget that ecology in this time is also aligned with economy, because the main point about the environment in eco-driving is diminishing the consumption in fuel. So, great. Now, you have to take into account that when you make this kind of study, you have to very precisely define the scope of definition of your study. For example, by diminishing the number of kilometers, let us say, by diminishing the number of kilometers you will drive, you will also keep your truck longer, but if you keep your truck 5 years, a 5 years old truck also consumes more energy than a new truck, so you have to take that into account. That's very hard. In this case, for example, they said, okay, we won't consider the energy that is embodied in the truck to create this truck, and we won't consider those kind of stuff. Now, still, because you have to run all those IT systems to optimize the way you drive, it also means, we have seen that all along this presentation, that because IT is also polluting, and that you will, and that optimization calculation takes really a lot of CPU power, that you will pollute the environment because of your computation. So that's a negative point in setting up eco-driving. The other point is that you will have to train your people to drive in an eco-friendly way, which means that instead of driving, I don't know, 50,000 kilometers a year, they will drive 500 more kilometers each driver just for training. So of course, during this time, you will produce, you consume more fuel, and of course, this will have a negative impact on your calculation. Let's take very easy and extreme figures. If to make sure that a driver can drive eco-friendly, you have to drive for 10,000 kilometers, and then normally he drives 30,000 kilometers a year. And thanks to eco-driving, you can improve by 10% your consumption. It is not worth consuming 30% more 10,000 kilometers compared to 30,000 fuel in training just to gain 10% at the end. So you have to take all those elements into account to make your equilibrium at the end. Also, of course, I won't spend much time because they are quite obvious on the green bullets, but they are, apart from the direct environmental impact and the economy impact, other impact, like if you consume less, you pollute less, so you have healthier air. And those people that learn, that are trained how to eco-drive their truck, they also eco-drive their car. So there is also another impact that cannot be taken into account, but which is beneficial for the environment. In this quick discussion, you directly see that this type of model, this type of study is quite hard to do. Another topic where in the domain of transportation we can improve things thanks to IT is just what we are doing today. I haven't been commuting to, sorry for the typo in the title, I haven't been commuting to, I don't remember the city, but close to Göteborg for this conference. I left home, which was quite cool because just jumping to one of the last point, but just as a joke to begin this slide, instead of taking a breakfast at the hotel this morning before to meet you, I could take my breakfast with my wife and my kids, so higher quality of life. Just aside of the fact that not taking the plane is of course eco-friendly. Now let's be more serious and try to measure the effect of staying at home for this conference. Well, that's nice to stay at home, but during this time we are consuming a lot of energy for all the networking infrastructure. I'm consuming a lot of energy with my computer here. And I also have to warm my house because I'm staying home. And if I were in the classroom now, I would benefit from the warming of the university. I wouldn't have to warm my house. So 2 remarks on that. First of all, again, the model is not that easy, so you really have to think carefully when you want to take a decision for telecommuting. And I want to mention another thing, is that if I were to live, let us say, in Italy, where I don't have to warm my house, the negative impact of staying at home and having to warm my house wouldn't be the same as the impact of if I'm living in Sweden, but I'm not telecommuting, because I'm pretty sure that the consumption in fuel for housewarming in your place is higher than in my place or in Italy. What I want to insist on in here is that if you are in a company and want to set up this telecommuting project, you have to take into consideration the local details of your model. Other point which is very important, as I understood that I am speaking to future managers, is that when you have people around you at the office, that's very easy to see that they are working and not surfing on Facebook. It's very easy to see that they spend a lot of time at the coffee machine and so on. Generally speaking, that's very easy to manage them. When they are working at home, you have to ask them very specific objectives for when they are back at the office, which is called management by objective. And this is really a change in the culture on how you manage people. So there again, of course, there is no impact on the environment, but if you think sustainability rather than just green IT, you have to think about the people side of the change. And here, of course, you have to think about the people side of management. Okay, the idea usually when I'm in front of the people in the classroom, which is easier, of course, there to interact, is also to brainstorm about what do you think the future of green IT is, and do you think that there is a future to green IT? It makes sense that we will speak about green IT in the next few years. What's your opinion on that? No. Yeah, I hear you. But do you feel like this thought about IT and the environment is a current thought in the industries in Sweden? Hmm?
Are doing.
Okay. So there is a future
Well,
for
of course,
green
we
IT
agree
thinking.
with you on that issue. We think that it is an important issue.
And was it
Can
just
you hear
enough
me?
within 2 hours from the material I presented to you? Are you still all awake? Did you really feel like, well, understanding what it is about, and did you understand all those concepts? Do you think that you will be able tomorrow to evangelize what Green IT is about?
Well, there are a couple of companies which have started to work with Green IT, and the green thought is a trend between Swedish companies in different
No problem. It was
industries.
a pleasure to make this kind of long distance conference without taking the plane.
Definitely.
Sure. And if they are well, if it is again for just a few hours, of course, it makes sense to make it like that. And if for any reason we have a, if I may say, business case, no problem to spend a few days in cold weather there in the northern part of Europe, no problem. Maybe less green, but for higher interaction, I think it can be interesting. But not for just a workshop, of course, for more than a workshop.
No, I think that we've got the idea, and we would like to thank you for being here with us today. And we hope that you will agree to be with us in with other occasions
I
as
sent
well.
you a few opportunities by mail, and we just pick up meeting on Skype online. But I will have to go at the customer side this afternoon. so I won't be available in Skype. But next week, and I sent you a few slots by name. Bye.